When McConnell voted against RFK Jr., he betrayed President Trump and the MAGA agenda. Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron are Mitch's boys. I'm Nate Morris, a pro-Trump conservative businessman and political outsider.
Well, there's a political shockwave out of Kentucky as Mitch McConnell allies have been caught plotting against U.S. Senate candidate Nate Morris. So here to discuss the panic that has been reverberating through the Kentucky establishment, the man at the center of it all, Nate Morris. Thanks so much for joining us again here, Nate. I feel like there has been so much that has been happening in this race. We had to have you back on. So tell us about the latest and what's going on.
Well, this is what happens when you take on the establishment and you're taking on someone who's been in the United States Senate for 40 years. I mean, can you believe that? Mitch McConnell was first elected in 1984 to the U.S. Senate. He's been in politics since the 1970s. And as you all know, I'm not a politician. I've never run for office before. I'm a businessman and entrepreneur. And I got in this race because I saw two McConnellites that would be no different than Mitch. And I said, enough is enough. We're going to have to change this up. And that's why I got in the race, is to shake it up and to provide something different that's aligned with President Trump and the MAGA movement, and not just a Mitch McConnell 2.0. And both of my opponents are Mitch puppets. I said this last time I was here. And since I talked to you last, Mitch McConnell has put together money in a super PAC to benefit both of my opponents to try to take me out. And that tells you everything you need to know, that we're on the right path, that we're well positioned to disassemble and destroy the establishment that Mitch McConnell's built over the last 40 years and give this seat back to the people where it belongs, not in the hands of political bosses, not in the hands of patronage and all the lobbyists that have benefited for years from Mitch McConnell. And that's why I know our candidacy is on the right track, and we're doing some great things in Kentucky because we're really shaking it up.
Well, Nate, I firmly believe that people in your state and throughout the country, they rejected Mitch McConnell in 2024 when they elected President Trump. Nonetheless, look, we have to be honest. There's this problem all over of incumbents or their cronies clinging to power by whatever means necessary. And in this case, one of your obstacles, as you mentioned, is money. I mean, Mitch has big, deep pockets of money. He always has. So those guys are going to get that stuff. Your opponents are going to get, cash. How would you describe their plan? What do they think they're going to do to hold on to power? What's their argument against you? Are they pretending to be pro-Trump, or what are they doing?
Well, they're going to say that they're MAGA candidates and they're with the president. But let's remember what Mitch McConnell has done to Donald Trump. This is a guy that stabbed the president in the back every chance he got. He blamed President Trump for January 6th. And Mitch McConnell likes to talk a big game when he goes around Kentucky, just about how powerful he's been over the years. And I would say to Mitch McConnell, why didn't you stand up to Joe Biden when he was trying to put President Trump in jail? I mean, Mitch McConnell did nothing when they were trying to put Donald Trump in jail. I couldn't believe it. And never stood up to him and supported things like amnesty. You all may recall one of the key features of our policy positions in this campaign is a full moratorium on any new immigration coming into our country until we deport every single one of the 20 million illegals that have invaded our country. Joe Biden just led in the United States. And Mitch McConnell sat back and let it happen. And so my opponents, they're going to align with Mitch. Their campaigns are run by Mitch people. All their money's coming from Mitch. And now they have this super PAC that's trying to take us on head to head because, look, I'm investing some of my own money, but we also have thousands of grassroots donors around the country to stop Mitch McConnell and his machine once and for all. And this race is going to be a referendum. Do you want more Mitch McConnell or do you want more Donald Trump? And I think Kentuckians are going to side with Donald Trump over and over again. And I think this race is going to be another example of that.
We know that Mitch McConnell has the deep pockets, as we were mentioning. We know he has a lot of power out there in Kentucky. But take me through this Lifetime Achievement Award that apparently didn't end up going to Mitch McConnell, which I have to assume is a pretty big surprise to him coming out of that.
Well, what was so crazy is we had our state Lincoln Day dinner. This is when all the county chairs and people from around the state, we get together as Republicans, we celebrate a lot of the victories. And we had gotten word about a month prior to the dinner that as a candidate for the U.S. Senate, we're not allowed to talk bad about anybody that's not running against us in our particular race. Now, the person who runs our party wrote that letter so I wouldn't say anything bad about Mitch. And then we found out that they were actually planning to give him a Lifetime Achievement Award. Mitch McConnell has been going around the state, collecting accolades on his way out the door. And, you know, it's really crazy because he's had his day in the sun. He's had more than enough of these awards through his long career. And I think people have had enough. And we called it out. We said he does not deserve the Lifetime Achievement Award for stabbing the president in the back, for getting us into Ukraine, for running up our deficit and our debt, which is causing crazy inflation. And Kentuckians can't even afford to go to the grocery store because of inflation, and continuing to sabotage President Trump every chance he got. So there's no reason why he should have gotten this award. And luckily, I think that people in the party, they got that message and they said, we can't give this to him. So I feel like we did the right thing by pushing that conversation and pushing the party to show them that we're headed for a new direction. The years of Mitch McConnell, we can put those to rest once and for all. We can kill McConnellism once and for all in Kentucky. And I think this is what this race is all about.
Yeah, Nate, so well said. I mean, I just can't say this enough. Everywhere in the audience and everyone I talk to throughout this country, I don't understand how the people in D.C. still don't get it sometimes. The voters in our audience doesn't care about the Republican, right, after your name. They care about whether or not you're part of MAGA Maha moving this thing forward. So if Republicanism means McConnellism, I mean, you're doing the entire party a service. That means it's going to die. And if that's what it means, like that was rejected at the ballot box. But I'm interested in what you're saying about, you know, this going on in Kentucky. That's a great sign that the Republican Party there, went along the right way and didn't celebrate someone who represents everything to the detriment of Donald Trump and the agenda. But what's your agenda for Kentucky, the great state of Kentucky, moving forward? What do you think the big obstacles there? What do you want to accomplish for the state?
Well, first and foremost, we've got to have a clean break from McConnellism. And this campaign is about coming from the outside, being an entrepreneur and a business person. You know, I created a very large business starting out with $10,000 on a credit card. I built it into a business that eventually became public on the New York Stock Exchange for $2 billion in the waste management sector. And you all know the waste management sector is not the nicest industry. This is the Tony Soprano industry. So I've had a lot of experience fighting big entrenched interests and being a disruptor. But we need people that come from the outside and can finally end the reign of career politicians. Career politicians have run our country off a cliff. We know this. And the longer someone stays in Washington, it seems to me the more corrupt and the more tarnished that they get and away from the people's interests. And I think we need fresh blood. One of the things I talk a lot about is I don't need the job. I don't need the money. And I've committed to 2 terms in the U.S. Senate. And while I'm in the Senate for those 2 terms, I want to make sure also we don't get us into these globalist wars that are never ending and that we can't win. We've seen that with Iraq. We've seen that with Ukraine. We've got to get a balanced budget. We got to talk about that and get that moving once again, because we can't leave the debt to our children that we have today. We're not going to have a country. And I think standing with the people of Kentucky, you know, I think most Kentuckians maybe don't know this, but Mitch voted for gun control. Mm-hmm. We don't call it Guntucky for nothing. You know, and the Second Amendment is celebrated here in the Bluegrass state, and voting against their interests over and over again. We can't have a senator who does that. And I don't owe anybody anything. I don't owe the swamp anything. I don't owe special interests anything. And I think that's why I'm going to be the right senator for the state to bring a new tradition of leadership that's completely independent of all the bad stuff that we've had to suffer through with these career politicians, and finally give it back to the people where it belongs.
You know, Nate, I listening to you cracks me up a little bit. I remember I did for a hot second, I did some consulting for in the waste management industry, and I can only affirm everything you're saying. This is a tough, rough and tumble world, and it also leads me to the last question here, which is, you're in an industry where, and just as a businessman, a successful businessman, you know how these people are and how politics works, both from a local level, on through state and federal. It's a dirty business. It's a dirty world, right? And the political world is, by all accounts, by everyone's understanding, corrupt right now. I'm just curious, what do you think causes that, right, among the sort of Washington, D.C. class? Like, psychologically, how do you evaluate these people who become part of the Borg? What do you think happens to them?
Well, I think you stay in a place like Washington for 40 years and you get patted on the back for all these things that you supposedly do up there, and you're dependent on special interest money and just to get reelected. And Mitch McConnell's been obsessed with two things his entire career. That's money and power. And he came in to the Senate as a very poor man. I think he was in debt or had no money. He's one of the richest senators in the U.S. Senate today. He's worth over $100 million. That's what gets reported. And that's crazy. This should not be a career for people. Our founding fathers did not intend for people who go into public service to make it their career to get elected to office. And I think that's fundamentally what's made America, it's set us back, it's made us corrupt in Washington, and we got to stop that. And we do that by imposing things like term limits on ourselves, bringing people from the outside, bringing in fresh blood. I grew up raised by a single mom. We struggled. We were on food stamps. Most of my family members worked in an auto factory. So I've seen the perspective of the American worker, and we cannot forget the people that we go and represent. And people like my family who get hurt by things like NAFTA, bad trade deals can cause generations of harm. And we've seen that with things like NAFTA and other policies. And this comes from being disconnected by thinking these things are a good idea. People say your immigration stance is too tough. And I say, well, the people who are saying that are the same people that said NAFTA was a good idea. And we can't listen to the elites to get all of our information. I think that's what happens to guys like McConnell when they've been in Washington so long. They start thinking that the elites have all the answers, but we got to stay in touch with the people. And we do that by continuing to send outsiders and people that have term limited themselves and stayed connected to what's going on the ground with everyday Kentuckians that are fighting every day just to make it.
Wow, Joe, this idea that Nate's talking about, that you should make money from providing goods and services to people and not being in office for a long time. That's a wild concept. It
is sad to see the number of people that go to Washington, D.C. poor and come out millionaires. Nate, if people want to learn more, where do they need to go?
Please come and see my website, natemorris.com. We are taking on the McConnell machine. We need your help and support. Chip into the campaign, be part of the movement, and please follow me on Twitter @NateMorris. Would love to engage in conversation.